Mark Brewer, we all know that we're held hostage, that cheap gas, or gas at all really, is a function of the Middle East's willingness to provide it. If Barack Obama puts his hand on the Bible on January 20th, what is going to be the main thrust of his energy policy?
I think certainly making the transition to a less fossil fuel dependent future is critically important. As a transitional measure, certainly additional drilling, not in ANWR. Joe's got that wrong. There is a National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, which is not ANWR, and Senator Obama supports drilling there. That the purpose of that reserve
I didn't say
for
supported
such
drilling in ANWR. I didn't say supported drilling.
I heard you say that, Joe.
No, I did not say
All right.
that.
Very good.
I said they both are opposed to ANWR drilling.
Beyond that, though, I think you really have to tie in the energy issues and, frankly, our climate change problem, because they really are similar and overlapping problems. What Senator Obama would very much like to see is, for example, us to move to a renewable requirement of 25% within 20 years. That would require a wide variety of sources, wind, solar, and on down the line. Nuclear may be a part of that. Senator Obama is not opposed to that. We believe we need a cap and trade system to dramatically reduce greenhouse emissions.
Tell us what cap and trade means.
Cap and trade is a system whereby the amount of CO2 in this example would be limited, capped, and that cap would slowly be reduced in order to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases. In order for any emitter of those gases to do so, they would have to basically pay, and there would be a market in these credits that people would buy and sell in order to be able to emit these gases. The initial cap and trade system, Obama would auction off the right for those emissions and use that revenue to start these investments in alternative energy to help a lot of low-income Americans with the transition costs they're going to have, because there are going to be some higher costs that'll be paid there. And so I think, again, as you look at energy, it's not only the national security interest in reducing our dependence on foreign oil, be it from the Middle East or from South America or anywhere else, but also tackling at the same time this critical problem of climate change.
I need my minute on this one.
All right.
In June of 2006, I traveled to London with Senator McCain, just he and I, to attend a conference on global climate change. And one of the things that Senator McCain spoke about there was cap and trade. He believes very strongly in cap and trade and would certainly want to push a cap and trade program in which the United States was a participant through the Congress. An interesting little aside with that, I'm going to take 10 seconds more because it's not political.
I yield to the gentleman.
We had dinner, Senator McCain and I, with some members of the Chinese delegation. Now follow this one through. And this woman from China, who was a recognized scientist in her country, looked at me and said, "You have more emissions, noxious emissions, CO2 emissions, other gaseous emissions per capita than we have in China." And I just wanted to look at her and say, no shit, we have 5 times more people in China than the United States. This was her big point. So you can see the attitude that some people have toward the United States in this. China is okay, even though they are now #1. They've just passed us in emissions because their emission total is less per capita than the United States. McCain almost fell off his chair. I did. So.
Dr. Mahawili, based on what you have just heard, which of these two candidates has the more reasonable and logical and correct energy prescription for this country?
Look, I think we need to know, as Americans, that the rate of consumption is a very important number that's published by DOE almost on a weekly average basis, that we consume 21 million barrels of oil per day. And at current price of $60, which changed from a couple of weeks ago, that's around $300 billion that we ship overseas because we import 65% of our oil. So the fact that both candidates, I see every day on TV saying they are going to reduce our dependency on foreign oil, I see that as a very huge challenge, and I don't see the details behind it. The other concern I have, I think we should talk about nuclear. Nuclear has really got the cheapest price for generating power per kilowatt hour. It's even cheaper than coal or natural gas on the average. The reality is, since 3 Mile Island, we've lost the infrastructure to build nuclear plants. So I think the senator is correct that it's going to take a long time in coming, maybe 20, 30 years before we rebuild the educational institutions and the infrastructure to build them. Also, that nuclear waste is important, and I think the Yucca Mountain has to be addressed more carefully, and the one airplane scenario which happened in 9/11 needs to also be addressed from a security.
The one airplane scenario?
The one airplane scenario where an airplane can crash into a nuclear plant causing some serious damage. But the bottom line for nuclear, Senator McCain is saying there are 45 projected to be built. The cost of that is approximately $300 billion. My only question is this reality after the $700 billion bailout? Is the $300 billion a reality in our present economic system?
Professor, you guys are worse than the candidates. Answer my question. Which of them has a more realistic policy?
I'm not taking side. Let me take a scientific side.
All right, I've totally failed on that one. Next question. Mark Brewer, every day we listen to John McCain and Barack Obama talk about the vast tax cuts they're going to make and which side's tax cuts are better. Obviously, I can't do math, that's why I became a journalist. But my limited math ability is, I look at this and we say, it is now projected that we're going to have an all-time record budget deficit of something like $900 billion. Cleves Whitney mentioned 28 years ago, at that time, our national debt was about $800 billion. It is now moving up toward $12 trillion. Now, how in the world is Barack Obama going to find any money to provide tax cuts and further enlarge the budget deficit, and why should he do that, Mark?
Well, I think we should allow the Bush tax cuts, which favored the very wealthy in this country, to simply expire. And that is what Barack Obama will do if he's elected president. We allow them to expire, but the other thing that he has said in the last couple of debates was that obviously with this changing fiscal situation, all the emergencies we have coming on us, that all of his very ambitious and I think visionary plans can't occur at once. They're going to have to be dealt with in some kind of order, some kind of phasing in. For example, he gave in one of the debates the issue of tackling Social Security reform. While that needs to start immediately, that's not something that would be finished in, say, the first year of an Obama administration, probably third or fourth year before they got to that, because the important thing on the plate is dealing with the economic crisis. So I think that's the answer, that we would finance these tax cuts that he has talked about with allowing the Bush tax cuts to expire, and then, frankly, it's a matter of prioritizing the other ambitious programs that he's got. I have mentioned already earlier tonight some of the other revenue sources, the cap and trade system. Those allowances would be auctioned off. That would be create money to finance the other parts of that system. So I think there is the means there to do it. But there's no doubt that the financial crisis and the national debt that has been generated over the last 8 years, particularly by George Bush, are going to make it very difficult to accomplish these goals.